You hear it all the time in movies, right? Roger that. It just sounds so cool, so official. But have you ever wondered what's the real story behind that phrase? Well, today we're going to uncover its pretty surprising history. I mean, it sounds competent for sure, but think about it for a second. Why that specific phrase? Why wouldn't pilots or soldiers just say something simple like "got it" or "yep"? As it turns out, the answer is way more interesting than you might think. And okay, right off the bat, here's the first big twist in our story. The phrase "Roger that" has absolutely nothing to do with some guy named Roger. So, if Roger isn't a person, what in the world is it? So let's dive in and decode this mystery. To really get Roger, you have to go back in time with me. Picture an era when just hearing someone's voice over a great distance was a brand new, incredible technology, and a really dangerous one at that. I mean, just imagine you're trying to communicate through this blizzard of static. You've got engine noise roaring in your ears, maybe some rough weather, maybe even gunfire in the background. In an environment like that, every single word had to be crystal clear, because one little misunderstanding could literally be the difference between life and death. All right, so let's actually trace the journey of this phrase. How in the world did we get from a simple letter in a code to a word that now basically defines military and aviation talk? You can see this really clear evolution here. It all kicked off with Morse code, where tapping out the letter R was just the quickest shorthand for received. Then, when voice radio becomes a thing in the 20s and 30s, they needed a word for R that you could actually hear and not mistake for something else through all that static. The word they chose? Roger. By World War II, it was absolutely essential language for pilots everywhere. Okay, so this is the most important part to understand. Roger does not mean yes. It doesn't mean I agree. Its one and only job was to confirm one very simple thing. Your message made it through all the noise and I heard it. And that distinction, it's absolutely critical. A pilot saying Roger was just acknowledging, yep, I heard your instructions. Whether they would follow them or even could follow them, well, that was a whole other question. This prevented some seriously dangerous assumptions in the middle of all that chaos. Now, this points to a really key idea in radio communication. Redundancy is your friend. Think about it. Roger that literally means received that. It sounds a little repetitive, doesn't it? But when you're flying a plane through a thunderstorm, that tiny bit of extra confirmation makes all the difference. It adds a layer of certainty that you just can't afford to skip. Okay, so that's the history, but what about today? Let's take a look at how the phrase went from having this super strict technical meaning to how we all think about it now. Because let me tell you, there's a huge gap between how the pros use it and what we see in the movies. This right here is a distinction that pilots and air traffic controllers live by. Roger means I hear you. Wilco, which is just short for will comply, means I hear you, I understand, and I'm going to do what you just told me to do. They are absolutely not the same thing. So, next time you hear a hero in a movie say Roger Wilco, you can kind of chuckle to yourself. They're basically saying, I have received your message and will comply. I will comply. It sounds cool, I guess, but in a real cockpit, it's just plain wrong. Wilco already includes the Roger part. And we can pretty much thank Hollywood for blurring these lines. You know, movies made Roger that into the ultimate cool guy sign-off. It just leaped out of the cockpit and into our everyday slang. And without us even realizing it, we started connecting it with this feeling of discipline and, just getting the job done. But here is another fascinating twist in the story. In the official modern NATO phonetic alphabets, the one used all over the world today, the word for the letter R isn't Roger anymore. It's Romeo. So why the big change? Well, it all came down to global standardization. As flying became more and more international, they needed words that could be pronounced clearly and understood perfectly by a pilot from any country. And it turns out Romeo is just easier for people with different accents and languages to say and recognize than Roger. And yet, Roger still lives on in our culture. When you really boil it all down, this whole story isn't just about a word. It's about this relentless, decades-long pursuit of absolute clarity in situations where lives are on the line. And that's a fair question, right? Okay is simple. Everybody knows it. But here's the thing. In a high-stakes environment, the word okay is actually dangerously ambiguous. Just think about it. If someone replies to you with okay, what does that really mean? Does it mean they heard you? Does it mean they understood what you said? Do they agree with you? Or, maybe most importantly, are they actually going to do it? The word leaves way too much room for guessing, and that's a risk you just can't take. And look, this is not just some theory. The single deadliest accident in aviation history, the Tenerife airport disaster, was caused in part by exactly this: unclear radio phrases and misunderstood messages. After terrible tragedies like that, the rules for communication got even stricter. Clarity isn't just a nice to have, it's a survival mechanism. And that principle, that need for precision, is more important today than ever. We're talking about everyone from NASA communicating with astronauts in space, to drone pilots flying missions from halfway across the world, to emergency crews coordinating on the ground. All of these fields rely on this system of structured, unambiguous communication. It really is the modern legacy of Roger. So, the next time you hear somebody say, "Roger that," you'll know the truth. You're not just hearing a cool piece of slang they picked up from the movies. You're actually hearing a little piece of history. It's like a tiny linguistic fossil, you know? A word that carries a whole century of progress inside of it. The story of evolving from Morse code to voice radio, the brutal demands of wartime communication, and our never-ending quest for perfect clarity. It's an echo from the past that's still shaping our present, hidden in one of the most common phrases we know.